After watching this video, you'll be able to distinguish between Agile and Scrum, define the key characteristics of the Scrum methodology, and describe the steps in the Scrum process. Agile and Scrum are two words that many people use interchangeably, but there really is a difference. Agile is a philosophy. It is not prescriptive. It's a philosophy for doing work. Scrum is a methodology. It is prescriptive. It's a methodology for working in an agile fashion. So, what is Scrum? Well, it's a management framework for doing incremental product development. It emphasizes small, cross-functional, self-managing teams, and it provides a structure of roles and rules and artifacts, and we're going to learn about all of those. It also uses these fixed-length increments that are called sprints. We're going to get into sprints in a moment. And it has a goal of building an increment each time through a sprint, a potentially shippable increment each time through that iteration. Very, very important that you get stuff in your customers' hands early. So, I like to say, easy to understand, difficult to master. There's not a lot of rules in Scrum, but somehow it's really, really hard to do. And I attribute it to being a ballerina. Like, all you have to do is dance on your toes, right? How hard could it be? Well, we all know it takes years to gain the muscle memory and build up your muscles to be able to dance on your toes. It's not as easy as it looks, and Scrum is the same way. Not as easy as it looks. So, my advice is if you've never done it before, hire somebody on the team who has. Have someone to guide you, someone to mentor you, because it is a lot harder than it looks. So, let's talk about the sprint. A sprint is one iteration through the design, code, test, deploy cycle, right? So, you're doing these mini iterations. It's kind of like the software delivery lifecycle, in a mini inner iteration. Every sprint should have a goal. You should, everybody should, understand what is it we're trying to build with this increment. What should this increment do at the end of the sprint? And then the sprints are usually 2 weeks long. Some people say 2 to 4 weeks. I find 4 weeks to be far too long. A lot of things can change in 4 weeks. Remember small, want to work in small batches. And so, I think it's really important to try to keep your sprints to 2 weeks. Some people get them down to 1. That's a little too fast for me, but 2 weeks seems to be a good goal to make your sprints. So, let's look at the steps in the Scrum process. You've got the product backlog. This is the list of all the stories of everything you ever want to do with your product. This is it. This is everything. It's kind of your to-do list of everything you might want to do. Then we've got something called backlog refinement. That's when we go through the product backlog. And we groom the stories to make sure that they're sprint ready because we want to start doing planning on those stories. Then, we have a planning meeting where we produce a sprint backlog. Notice the sprint backlog is smaller than the product backlog. The sprint backlog is just those stories that we want to accomplish in the next sprint, in the next 2 weeks. So we take from that product backlog, pare it down into a sprint backlog of just the stories to execute in the next sprint. And then we start our 2-week sprints. And every day we get together and do the daily scrum or the daily stand-up where everybody gets to answer 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And is there anything blocking you or impeding you from getting up further? So you go through that every day for 2 weeks, build your sprint. And then finally, hopefully, you've got a valuable shippable increment at the end of that process. Agile development is iterative. You're going to go through this again and again. Design, code, test, deploy, design, code, test, deploy. I mean, this is what you do in every sprint. And notice, you've got to have some kind of deploy. It's not enough to just do design, code, and test, design, code without deploying it and getting feedback, right? So every sprint you make a plan, you go through the software delivery lifecycle, and then you deploy that application and you get some feedback from the customer that is input to the next plan to go through the next cycle. In this video, you learned that Scrum is a methodology that follows the Agile philosophy. The Scrum Management Framework provides structure through defined roles, meetings, rules, and artifacts. It also prescribes small cross-functional, self-organizing teams, uses fixed-length iterations called sprints, and produces a potentially shippable product increment with every iteration.